How are you guys doing? I hope you guys have an amazing weekdays. And right now, let's get into the topic, okay? Man attacked by bear in Colorado survives after managing to grab his gun. A man survived a bear attack in his backyard after he managed to grab his gun when the animal knocked him to the ground. It happens on Saturday night in the small town of Newcastle, Colorado, when he went to investigate a noise. He was able to protect his face while on the floor and reach for his weapon with his other hand. The bear ran away when he fired three shots, but it's unclear if it was hit. Colorado Parks and Wildlife said heavy rain made it difficult to find a possible blood trail, so a drone with an infrared camera took up the search. The hunt carried on over the weekend but has so far been unsuccessful. The man who went to the hospital with minor injuries told authorities he was seeing the bear in his yard the previous 2 nights. It's the second attack this year in Newcastle, about 130 miles west of Denver. A woman was charged by a bear in the first attack and the mother and cube had to be euthanized. Japan issues warning to residents after North Korea fires fires missiles over country for first time in 5 years. Residents were warned to take over, and an alert was issued to those living in the northeast of Japan to evacuate nearby buildings as the missile flew over the country before landing in the Pacific Ocean. Trains in the northern regions were also temporarily stopped as a result of the weapon test. Temporarily, the Japanese government said it did not use any defense measures to destroy the missiles, but warned that North Korea posed a serious challenge to the entire international community. It's the most significant missile test by North Korea since January when it fired the Hwasong-12 intermediate-range missile capable of reaching the U.S. territory of Guam, and this is the first time one of its missiles has flown over Japan since 2017. The launch is the fifth round of weapon tests by the country in the past 10 days in what was seen as an apparent response to military drills between South Korea and the United States, drills North Korea views as an invasion rehearsal. North Korea's series of actions, including its repeated ballistic missile launches, threatens the peace and security of Japan, the region, and the international community. Japan's top government spokesperson Hirokazu Masuno said. He added that the missile flew 4,600 kilometers, to equal to 2.850 miles, to a maximum altitude of 1,000 kilometers. Japan's Prime Minister Fumio Kishida said the firing is a reckless act and I strongly condemned it. Hong Kong, 3 deaths after crane collapse. 3 workers have died and 6 others were injured after a crane collapsed at a construction site in Hong Kong. The crane fell onto a number of cargo containers, which were being used as temporary offices. Some workers were in the containers when the crane down shortly before 11 a.m. local time, 4 a.m. BST on Wednesday, said fire official officer officer Yim Yin Kit. One man was declared dead at the site in Kowloon after suffering a skull fracture, while another died after being taken to hospital, authority says. Rescue teams spent hours trying to reach a third man who was trapped under the wreckage, but their efforts were unsuccessful. The crane was reportedly 30 meters tall with a 35-meter long arm and weighed 65 tons. 65 tons. It was in operation when it collapsed but was not carrying any load, Mr. Yim said. The scene of the accident was part of a construction site for a subsidized public housing project that aimed to create 90,000 homes, the South China Morning Post reported. The Secretary for Labor and Welfare, Chris Sun, has ordered work to be suspended at the site. Hong Kong leader John Lee said the Labor Department would investigate the incident and inspect construction sites with cranes to make sure they met safety standards. French police officer shoots dead driver who failed to obey order to stop. An officer is placed into custody following a shooting incident that is another in a series of instances of the use of deadly force by French police. A French police officer has been detained after shooting dead a driver who failed to obey an order to stop. Authorities said the driver failed to stop after an officer told him to because he was driving dangerously in the incident in the southern city of Nice. Instead, police said the driver accelerated to flee. It is the latest in a string of incidents that raise questions about the use of guns by French police. Nice Mayor Christian Estrosis thanked police officer on Twitter. He wrote full support for police and 06 agents faced with a refusal to comply on Avenue Henry Masty faced with a driver who deliberately ran over them. They thought they had to use their weapon to neutralize him. Refusal to comply or crime are on the increase. In the past 24 hours, our ambulance has been confronted with two particularly violent refusals to comply. Faced with these absurd, we must be behind our police. This deputy prosecutor of Nice, Marty, said at some point the car turned back to be in front of the police car and rammed into it twice. She said the officer fired a single shot at the driver. A video on social media showed the car in front of the damaged police vehicle driving backwards while an officer in the street points his gun at the driver's window. The officer shoots just after the driver appears to stop the car. Police union said the officer acted in self-defense. The latest incident took place in the same week, the trial for the 2016 Bastille Day truck attack that killed 68 people in Nice and got underway in Paris. Some experts say the number of deaths caused by officers using their weapon is increasing, which French researcher Christian Malhena from France National Center for Scientific Research CNRS saying the rise in incidents came after legal changes were introduced in 2017. The changes were brought in after a series of attacks by extremists in the country in 2015 to 2016. In another recent incident in the western city of Reims, a 22-year-old woman was killed after police opened fire on the car she was in during an anti-drug operation, bounding the driver. Earlier this year, a French police officer was charged with involuntary manslaughter after shooting dead two men in cars as they sought to escape a police check on the on the Pont Neuf Bridge in central Paris on the night of French President Emmanuel Macron's re-election. New broadcaster France Info said, based on its own count due to the lack of officer statistics, 9 people have been killed by police in similar situations this year. Last year, 4 people were shot dead in such circumstances, according to police figures. Hong Kong. Hurricane Earl threatens Bermuda and could bring life-threatening swells to U.S. East Coast. Earl, the second of the 2022 Atlantic hurricane season, is expected to continue to strengthen on and become a major hurricane, a Category 3, which has sustained winds of 111 to 129 miles and can cause devastating damage. Hurricane Earl, which is turning towards Bermuda, is forecast to strengthen and bring dangerous surf and rip current conditions over the eastern U.S. coastline later this week, forecasters have said. Earl, the second of 2022 Atlantic hurricane season, had maximum sustained winds of 100 miles on Wednesday night, made a Category 2 storm. It was expected to continue to strengthen and became a major hurricane, a Category 3, which has sustained winds of 129 miles and can cause devastating damage. Although Earl's center is forecast to pass south of Bermuda, tropical storm force winds are expected on the islands this afternoon through early Friday morning. The U.S. National Hurricane Center (NHC) said hurricane force winds are possible on Bermuda later today or tonight if Earl's track shifts farther west than is currently predicted, that Miami-based weather forecasters said. Swells generated by Earl are building near Bermuda and are expected to reach the U.S. East Coast later today, the NHC added. These swells are likely to cause life-threatening surf and rip current conditions through the weekend. A hurricane watch has been issued for Bermuda, a self-governing British overseas territory in the western North Atlantic Ocean. The island National Security Minister Michael Weeks told reporters that public services and government offices would keep operating but warned residents to brace for tropical storm conditions. Bermuda will certainly feel the effects from Earls, so we want to guard against complacency, he said. Further east, Hurricane Daniel was slowly weakening over open waters about 60 and 605 miles northwest of Azores. It had maximum sustained winds of 75 miles. Student who killed teachers with an axe is jailed for life. An 18-year-old student who attacked and killed 2 teachers with an axe at Swedish high school has been jailed for life. Fabian Vidar Sitterholm was found guilty of 2 counts of murder on Thursday. He was sentenced to life in prison, which in Sweden means a minimum of 20 to 25 years, but it could be extended. Sitterholm was a student at the school in Malmö, Sweden, third largest cities, where he carried out the attacks. The victims, Victoria Anstorm and Sarah Book, were found on the 3rd floor of Malmö Latin School, 10 minutes after the police were alerted. Students at the school that has about 1,100 pupils had gathered to work on a musical. Many locked themselves inside classroom when the attacks began. Malmö District Court heard Sitterholm killed the staff members by hacking them to death with an axe. Judge John Kraft said Sitterholm had also used a knife. These are two very brutal murders where the victims suffer severely, the judge said in a statement. Sitterholm was arrested shortly after the incident on 21st March. He was not previously known to authorities and had no criminal record. Prosecutor Johanna has had asked that Sitterholm, who confessed to the crime, be sentenced to life. A lawyer representing Sitterholm earlier had told Swedish media that the actions of the defendant were completely inexplicable. The court said the motive for the violent attack is not fully understood. Unveiled students returned to school for the first time after a mass shooting that killed 21st. I want to just shelter her as a mom, just keep her home. But of course I don't want her to live in fear, said the mother of one student in Texas community. Students and teachers returned to school Tuesday in the heartbroken community of Uvalde, Texas, for the first time since 19 children and 2 educators were killed during a mass shooting at an elementary school in May. As children returned to the classroom, the town continues to mourn those who were killed and demand accountability in deadly shooting at Robb Elementary School, during which law enforcement officers waited more than an hour before entering a fourth-grade classroom where the gunman carried out the attack. The first day brought anguish for parents whose children died in the massacre. Stephen Gracia, whose 9-year-old daughter Elena was killed, said he was an emotional wreck Tuesday morning and felt a surge of anger. I couldn't find the tears, but then I thought back to my Ellie and know she wouldn't want me to feel that way, he wrote in a post on social media. Thinking of all the first day of school with my Ellie, no one expects to have to bury their child after leaving them at school, he said in another post. Jennifer Lugo, Ellie's mother, said in a post the night before the first day of school that her stomach was in a big knot, and she was sure the family would be leaving the house with tears and not smiles. I'm missing one of my babies, she said, adding that Ellie loved school and was always excited to get up and get ready with her sister. Kimberly and Felix Rubio, whose daughter Lexi was killed, said ahead of the first day of school that they were frightened for their 5 other children. I don't know that the school district has done everything that I would like to see as far as security measures, but I also know it's important for the kids to have some sort of routine, so trying to balance what's best for them, Kimberly said. Lexi has been on her mind, she said, and meeting her youngest son's teacher was incredibly difficult. It's incredibly difficult to go on campus knowing that Lexi is not going to be meeting a teacher this year, Kimberly said. Students across the state were marooned to school Tuesday in support of the Uvalde community. Robb Elementary has not reopened since the shooting, and its surviving student has been scattered to different schools in the area. The school district also added virtual options this year for parents who didn't feel comfortable sending their children back into classroom. Parents arriving at some local school Tuesday morning were greeted with taller fences, increased security and cameras, a large law enforcement presence, more counselors, and even emotional support dogs. Outside Dalton Elementary School in Uvalde, Esther said that one of her children had attended Robb Elementary at the time of the shooting and had received counseling because she was traumatized. But Natalie, whose children are 7 and 8 years old, says she felt safer with the added security measure. I'm on the positive side, so I hope that what happened last year won't happen again, she said. For right now, I think they are in good hands. Pre-kindergarten teacher Belinda Remise says she wasn't nervous about the start of the school year in the shadow of the tragedy. She's happy that school is starting again, but also just a bit sad for the kids, she said. Her nephew attended Robb Elementary last school year. We asked him and he just stayed quiet. So I know he's a bit nervous, but we are happy that school is starting back up, and when we start, I would think it will get all better, she said. We have to just continue to move forward. Late last month, Uvalde School Police Chief Pete Arredondo was fired by Texas City's school board, which voted anonymously to oust him. The embattled chief removed capped 3 months of outrage over the botched law enforcement response to the shooting at Robb Elementary. 1 hour, 14 minutes, and 8 seconds passed from the time police entered the building May 24 until the gunman was killed, Texas Department of Public Safety Director Steve McCraw has said. A scathing report released in July by Texas House Committee investigating the mass shooting found systemic failures and poor decision making by law enforcement and the school district. And her husband Julio have made helping their 10-year-old daughters return to school a priority. The girl, Madison, was at Robb Elementary the day of the shooting. The family has enrolled Madison in a private school, which they say made safety upgrades after the shooting. I want to just shelter her as a mom and just keep her home, but of course, I don't want her to live in fear, she said. Here's what you need to know about Liz Truss, Britain's new leader. Sometime compared to the UK's first female leader, Margaret Thatcher, Truss has also been accused of being a political killman. London as a girl and a young woman, Liz Truss protests against then Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher and called for the abolition of the monarchy. Decades later, having risen through the ranks of Thatcher's Conservative Party, Truss, 47, on Tuesday was appointed to the United Kingdom Prime Minister by Queen Elizabeth II. As she headed to No 10 Downing Street, Truss looks eager to rule in the image of the famously blunt and strong-willed iconoclast whose legacy still divides this country. Her victory means she will become the country's third female leader, after Thatcher and Theresa May. The Iron Lady, as Thatcher was known, was the 20th century longest-serving British leader and birthed an ideology, Thatcherism, that still dominates the party with its low tax, high-growth economic liberalism. Serving as primer from 1979 to 1990. When she was forced to resign by her own government, Thatcher was a strident coal warrior and a supporter of free markets, and especially close to President Ronald Reagan, one of Britain's most divisive prime minister, revile and revere in almost equal measure to this day. She's best known for her policies. She's best known for her policy on deregulation, privatizing state-owned companies, and smashing the power of unions. She died in 2013. Whether international or not, observers and the public have pointed out Truss appears to have a habit of recreating iconic Thatcher public appearance. While serving as Foreign Secretary, Truss was accused of consciously mirroring Thatcher by posing in a Challenger 2 tank while visiting British troops In Estonia, a famous picture of Thatcher in the Challenger tank in Germany in 1986. When visiting Russia, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov at the Kremlin in February, she wore a fox fur hat that again was compared to that worn by Thatcher on a Russia trip in 1987. During the Conservative leadership contest, Truss wore an outfit strictly similar to one Thatcher had worn for an election broadcast in 1979, a black blazer and a white shirt with a bow tie at the front. For Truss critics, the similarities to Thatcher's are the best premature and worst ludicrous. I don't think there is anything in it. They're completely different people. Truss supporter Andrea Andino, 55, insisted outside the venue where Truss was announced the new leader of the Conservative Party on Monday. Andino wore a t-shirt in Liz We Trust. She's different. I don't think she will follow Thatcher in any way, she added. Timothy Kirkhope, a Conservative member of the upper chamber of the British Parliament, also dismissed the comparison, but for different reasons. I regard any comparison between Truss and Thatcher as derisory, he said in an email. I worked as a government whip under Margaret Thatcher. She was a colossus in politics. There is absolutely no way that Truss could ever get anywhere near the achievements of Thatcher, he said. Truss herself complained to BBC Radio 4 in July that women tend to get compared to Thatcher whether they resemble her or not. I'm on my own person, she said. James Cleverly, who served as an education minister under Boris Johnson, echoes these sentiments. She's a woman in politics, though comparisons are inevitable, and he said, she is Liz Truss, she's her own person. To those of us who have studied Thatcher, she's hardly in the same league, at least on current form, said Professor Tim Bell, an expert on British politics and the Conservative Party at Queen Mary University of London. While Thatcher was regarded then and now was a conviction politician who embodied her beliefs, Truss had been accused of being a political chameleon, flip-flopping on major policies and criticized for lacking hard and fast principles. She was an activist for the centrist Liberal Democrat Party as a college student. We do not believe people are born to be ruled. She said while arguing passionately for the abolition of the monarchy at the party conference in 1994, a testament to just how far she has traveled politically. Truss campaigned for Britain to remain in the European Union, only flip side and later support Brexit once the country has voted to leave in 2016. The commitment to Brexit and unlocking its supposed benefits is now a core pillar of her platform, an attitude that could lead to a heated and expensive legal battle with the European Union and the Republic of Ireland over the complex of Northern Ireland Protocol. While Truss said during the Brexit referendum campaign that Britain shouldn't spend years in massive divorce from Europe, she may be about to preside over exactly this. Born in Oxford in 1975, Mary Elizabeth Truss is the daughter of John Kenneth, a math professor at the University of Leeds, and Priscilla Truss, a nurse. In the biography section of her website, she described her parents as left-wing. When she was 4, the family relocated to Paisley, a town near Glasgow in Scotland. They moved again in 1985 to the northern English city of Leeds in West Yorkshire. Truss frequently refers to herself as a Yorkshire woman. a falsy attempt to contract her upbringing with the largely affluent Southern English background of many conservative members and activists. Throughout her leadership campaign, Truss said her vision of conservatism was inspired by seeing fellow students at the local public high school struggling in an overly bureaucratic failing system. Many of the children I was at school with were let down by low expectations, poor education standards, and a lack of opportunity, she said at her leadership launch July 14. Former student and staff at Raleigh and also local politicians dispute Truss' portrayal, accusing her of unfairly meddling the school for political gain. It is located in one of the most affluent areas of Leeds, and it certainly could never be described fairly as a sink school, he said via email, referring to British terminology for a failing and underachieving school. Her contentions about her deprived background as the daughter of the university professor are a load of nonsense, Crithope said. After graduating from Oxford in 1969, she abandoned the Liberal Democrats and joined the Conservative Party, the dismay of her left-leaning father. He was quite horrified, she told the Times newspaper in 2012. After college, Truss worked as a graduate trainee accountant for the energy giant Shell and later the telecommunications company Cable and Wireless. In 2000, she married fellow accountant Hugh O'Leary, and they have two daughters. After a youth of on the center-left university prime trust for conservation to the right, I met Tories and I realized that they didn't have two heads and were actually good people, she told the Daily Mail in 2019. Truss stood as a Tory candidate in the election of 2001 and 2005, losing both times. It would take another 5 years before she was finally elected as the MP for South West Norfolk. Truss has served in various cabinet positions since 2012 under the governments of David Cameron, Theresa May, and Johnson. It was under Johnson that she was promoted to foreign minister, one of the most powerful positions in government. Task was leading the transitions to a post-Brexit trading rim and forging new diplomatic ties. The Conservative Party may have ditched Johnson, but his brand of populism looks set to stay under the new prime minister. She stayed loyal to Johnson. She told the membership that they want to hear on the economy and taxations rather than any hard truths. She is a fierce Brexiteer and an anti-woke warrior, Bell said. Truss may be compared to Thatcher, but her critics believe she has much more in common with her predecessor. I regret that a Liz Truss premiership would be a continuation of the Boris Johnson style, Kipper said. A Truss government would be even more divisive and include individuals who are notable only for their extreme or eccentric view, he said. Steve Bannon expected to face state indictment in New York. The Manhattan DA office had opened an investigation into Bannon in connection with his role in a charity that was supposed to use private funds to build the U.S.-Mexico border wall. Almost 2 years after he received a pardon from President Donald Trump in a federal fraud case, Steve Bannon is expected to face state indictment in New York. In a segment first shared with NBC News on Tuesday night, Bannon said New York has now decided to pursue phony charges against me 60 days before the midterm election. This is nothing more than a Persian political weaponization of the criminal justice system, added Bannon, who once was the chief White House strategist in the Trump administration. The statement came after the Washington Post, citing people familiar with the situation, reported that Bannon planned to surrender Thursday. NBC News has has asked the Manhattan District Attorney Office for comment. The district attorney office last year opened an investigation into Brennan in connection with his role in a charity that was supposed to use private funds to build the U.S.-Mexico border wall, NBC News reported in February 2021. The previous year, Brennan was indicted with 3 other people on charges of taking money donated to help build a wall along the southern border. Federal prosecutors alleged that Brennan's We Build the Wall campaign, which raised more than $25 million, defrauded hundreds of thousands of donors who contributed to an effort to build a wall along the U.S.-Mexico border, one of Trump's key campaign promises. Trump pardoned Bannon in January 2021, but presidential pardons apply only to federal charges, meaning New York is not prohibited from pursuing similar charges. I am proud to be a leading voice on protecting our borders, and building a wall to keep our country safe from drugs and violent criminals, Biden said in Tuesday night's statement. They are coming after all of us, not only President Trump and myself. I am never going to stop fighting. In fact, I have not yet begun to fight. They will have to kill me first. Separately, Biden was convicted of contempt of Congress after he refused to answer questions from the House January 6 committee. A jury found him guilty on 2 counts of contempt of Congress in July. A woman jumped from a moving car after being kidnapped by a man who asked for water, authorities say. Jeremy Alaska, 31, is accused of holding the woman at knife point in Washington state. Authorities in Washington state identified a suspect Tuesday who they say carjacked a woman and held her at knife point until she escaped by jumping from a moving car. The woman had given water to Jeremy Alaska, 31, after he approached her vehicle asking for some in an incident that began in Vancouver, Washington. Early Saturday, the Clark County Sheriff's Office said in a news release. Alaska is expected to be charged with kidnapping, robbery, and attempted eluding after he fled from officers, the sheriff's office said. The woman, who has not been identified, told authorities after she gave Alaska water, she allowed him into her car. Alaska produced a knife and used the threat of violence to take control of the car. The release alleged, adding that he drove roughly 15 miles to the city of Camas. Alaska slowed down on a dirt road, authorities said, and the woman jumped from the car and started banging on the doors of the nearby homes. A resident, James Wood, told NBC affiliate KGW of Portland, Oregon, that he and his family awoke around 4:30 a.m. to the sound of a woman pounding on the back door of his home and moving the doorknob. She was desperate to get in, which I can't understand, Wood told the station. She told me that someone tried to kill her and someone stole her car. Was told the station that he called 911 after deputies searched the area and found the car. The driver fled, according to the release. 11 minutes later, and about 8 miles away, authorities from the sheriff's office and the Vancouver Police Department were able to pin the car. And the release says Alaska was taken into custody after he tried to flee the vehicle. The release says he refused to provide his name and was identified through other names. The sheriff's office says it wasn't immediately clear whether he has a lawyer to speak on his behalf. Police say that they have found.
Turning now to breaking news in the investigation of that missing Memphis jogger and mother of 2. Police confirmed today the body of 34-year-old Eliza Fletcher has.
Police say that they have found the remains of missing jogger Eliza Fletcher. Memphis authorities have confirmed a body found during the search for Eliza Fletcher was identified as the 34-year-old woman who was abducted during a run Friday morning. NBC News' Jess Chris reports on the news details police have released and the latest charges against the suspect charged with kidnapping Fletcher. And that is the end for today. Hope you guys enjoy this video, and I'll see you guys in the next video. See ya! Oh, and by the way, all the tips I gave you last time, I hope it worked, because it worked for me, and I think that it worked for most people with average memory. I myself have average memory, and I couldn't learn anything besides English because I hate everything. I hate every subject besides English. The only thing that I find English is interesting because it was another language, and I hate math. I hate math. I especially hate math, and I don't want to, calculate anything, and I not good at calculating things, so that's why I hate math. And about English is that when I was small, when I was about 9 years old, I watched Disney Channel a lot, and that is when I know I like English, because Disney Channel is all about English. If you don't understand English, so yeah, I watch it, and although I don't understand a word it was saying about what is the movie about and what it's called, I just remember the melody. Phineas the Verb, right? I just remember that the song in the intro song right from the start. I remember the melody, the way they pronounce, but I don't know for sure how they pronounce it. So I just remember the melody and I sing along. So that is when I remember all the stuff and all the words that I accidentally remember by remembering the melody. So when I said that music can help you a lot, I mean it. So if you guys try it, and if you have any, positive result, comment below, and follow for more if you like my tips and you find it effective. So yeah, thank you and goodbye. Oh, one more thing. I also like English, and I only good at speaking, and I'm not good at grammar. Yeah, I also not good at grammar. I only good at speaking because I can, mumbling to the sound, and like for example, they sing like what's going on, so I will like mama mama. I remember the sound. I don't remember what they're saying, and I don't know what they're saying, but I remember the sound. So when I grow up, it means when I was in secondary school or something like that, I learned it and I know, oh, so that's what it is, that what it was about, and yeah, that's how I learned it. And I only good at speaking because I remember the basic words, the basic step that they say. For example, hello, how are you? How are you today? You're good? Are you good? How are you today? I'm good, thank you for asking. Like just basic stuff, and I get better and better through movies. Yeah. So yeah, that's all I got. I don't know if I could help you with that, but I think for myself, I I'm getting better. And you have to learn. You you cannot learn English without learning it. Uh, you know, without actually learning it. So you have to put time and effort into learning stuff, and eventually it will come out great. It will get you a positive result and a, a very good result that you want. So don't give up and don't lose trust in yourself, especially when you find it hard. Just took a break. Just take a break and get some air, go outside, have fun with your friends for a day if you're feeling stressed about studying stuff, and after that you get it together and yeah, just study, dude. That's it. Part of is investigation into the incident. IOBC London Regional Director Salman Asim said, when the police use fatal force, it is important that there is a robust, independent investigation to establish all of the circumstances surrounding what happened. It is natural that the community wants answer quickly, but I would ask that people refrain from speculation that may be unhelpful to all of those affected. I want to reassure everyone concerned by this incident that our investigators are working hard to establish the entire sequence of events which result in this man's death. Teenager stabbed to death and another critically ill after a highly worrying incident in East London. Two teenagers were found with stab wounds following a disturbance involving a large group of people in Lichfield Road in the East London borough of Tower Hamlets at about midnight on Sunday. A teenager have been stabbed to death, and another is critically ill in hospital after a highly worrying incident. Scotland Yard said they found two males with stab wounds after being called to a disturbance around midnight involving a large group of people in Lichfield Road, Tower Hamlets, East London. A murder investigation is now underway, but no arrests have been made yet, said police. The teenager who died, believed to be aged 17, was pronounced dead at 1:54 a.m. on Sunday. The second man taken to the hospital is thought to be 18. Detective Chief Inspector Mark Rogers of the Met Specialist Crime Command said, "This is a highly worrying incident that has left one young man dead and another fighting for his life in the hospital. I'm aware of reports saying that about 100 people armed with weapons were involved. The information does not appear to be wholly accurate. We know a significant number of people were caught up in this incident, but not necessarily directed, involved, or armed with weapons." The force said it has yet to arrest anyone in connection with the stabbing. Anyone who has information that can help, including pictures or footage of the incident, is asked to call the Metropolitan Police Major Incident Room on 020-8345-3715, quoting reference Operation Wildcat. Alternative, call Crime Stoppers anonymously on 0800-555 and 111. The incident man shot dead in West London. The incident comes hours after a boy believed to be 12 was stabbed in the East London borough of Newham. Meanwhile, police have arrested a 29-year-old man on suspicion of murder following the death of a man in West Kensington in London. Officers were called to Kensington High Street at about 2 a.m. on Sunday. They found a man believed to be in his 20s with gunshot wounds and provided emergency first aid until the arrival of the London Ambulance Service and London Air Ambulance. The man was taken to a central London hospital where he later died. Man uses his car to stop out-of-control vehicle with ill driver on busy motorway. John Barlow said he thought the driver was dead when he first noted the Audi in the outside lane of the M62 going slower and slower. A motorist has described the dramatic moment he used his car to stop another vehicle whose driver had fallen seriously ill at the wheel on a busy motorway. John Barlow thought the other driver was dead when he saw the car heading slowly along the overtaking lane of the M62 near Leeds on Saturday. Fearing a crash, he managed to get his Hyundai in front of the ill driver's Audi and then take his foot off the accelerator and bring the car behind to a stop. He was then able to get out and help the man, who was barely breathing. After trying to break into the locked vehicle using his elbow, Mr. Barlow was helped by a tradesman with a hammer to get access to the stricken middle-aged driver, and then tie his head back to free his airway. Others then stopped to help, including a doctor on the other carriageway of the M62 who traveled to the next junction, turned around, then battled through the backup traffic to get to work with a defibrillator. Mr. Barlow, a 59-year-old martial arts instructor from Middleton, Greater Manchester, told the PA news agency he had first noted the 80 in the outside lane going slower and slower and pulled alongside. He said he looked dead at the wheel. I could see his lips were blue and he had blood trickling down his face. His head was tilting forward. I thought, oh my God, I got to stop him. I matched his speed, then eased my way in front of him, and then slowly took my foot off the accelerator. He was driving his wife, Chrisley, and son, Joey, 7, to pick up a new kitten in Pontefract, West Yorkshire, and his son in the back screamed as the runaway car behind bumped into him. I guess the car behind was going 30 miles. He hit my car a couple of times and then we came to a stop, he said. Other drivers stopped at the scene, bringing the 4-lane carriageway to a halt. And a FISO and an off-duty female police officer took over the first aid until paramedics arrived. Mr. Barlow said everyone was amazing. It was a real team effort. They got the man on the floor. Then the doctor jumped in as well. The next day, Mr. Barlow received a call from West Yorkshire police thanking him, and he was told the driver has suffered a seizure but was well enough to go home. And he asked for people to think about taking a first aid course and having something in their car that could be used to break a window in an emergency. Florida man had arm bitten off in alligator attack before getting lost in woods for 3 days. She dragged me under 3. A Florida man who had his arm ripped off by an alligator as he swam across a lake has offered some advice, saying leave them gators alone. Eric Marta from Sarasota was taken to hospital after the attack at Lake Manatee Fish Camp in Mayaka City in the U.S. state on 17 July. Now out of hospital and adjusting to life without his arm, he has spoken about the scary incident which saw him maim by the alligator and wandered around lost for 3 days. He said he came across the lake and decided to swim across instead of walk around it. I looked over and there's a gator on my right hand side, so I went to swim. And she got my forearm. So I grabbed her like this. She was trying to roll, but she snapped my head, so my arm went backwards completely, Mr. Marta said. He said he had to fight for his life. She dragged me under 3 times. She already got my arms, so when we came up the third time, she finally did a death roll and took off with my arm. He managed to get out the lake, but then spent 3 days trying to find his way. You can't see anything. Sometimes I feel like I was walking in circles. I didn't know. So I started following the sun and power lines, stuff like that, things I could see. After 3 days in the swamp, he said he stumbled on a fence and a man on the other side. I said, "Hey man, I need some help." And he says, "What are you doing?" And I said, "A gator got my arm." And now he's adapting to a new normal with a new perspective. And he has some alligator-based advice. Do not feed the gators, alright? And you guys know who you are, throwing rocks at them and stuff. I've seen it on the job sites. Leave them gators alone, he said. Man, 23, admits killing Canadian teenager he met on dating app. Ashley Westward moved to the UK only 3 months before she was stabbed to death by her boyfriend. A 23-year-old man from Essex has admitted to murdering his teenage Canadian girlfriend. Jack Sepple killed 19-year-old Ashley Westworth from Vernon in British Columbia at a house in Chelmsford in February after meeting her on a dating app. Officers were called to an address in Tennyson Road shortly after 4 p.m. on 1 February after reports of a disturbance. Paramedics tried to save Miss Westmore, but she was pronounced dead at the scene. An inquest hearing was told that she died of stab wounds to the chest. In a brief hearing at Chelmsford Crown Court, several barristers said a psychiatrist had indicated that the defendant was fit to plead. Christopher Paxton, QC for Sepple, said that the issue of fitness is now resolved and requests that the defendant be asked to enter a plea. The court clerk read the single charge of murder and Sepple standing in the secure dock in a long white sleeve top with tattoos on his face and hand. Replied, "I'm guilty." Judge Christopher Morgan told Sepple, "By your plea of guilty to murder, there's only one sentence that can be passed, and that's a life sentence." He remanded the defendant in custody until the date if found for sentencing. Mr. Westworth moved to Chelmsford in November 2021. She wrote on Facebook. Earlier this year, she posted photos online of her amazing trip to London, where she had been sightseeing. London therapist accused by sister of stealing from rich mother tells court of threatening relationship. Jonathan Phil from Kilburn, northwest London, told Southwark Crown Court, "My mother liked to wear fashionable clothes. She liked to wear skinny jeans and she liked to wear jackets, and she would shop everywhere." A therapist accused by his sister of stealing from their wealthy mother's bank account has told court of their threatening relationship he has with his sibling. Jonathan Field denied 2 charges of theft from his 89-year-old mother, who is reportedly suffering from significant cognitive decline, in a private prosecution from his sister, Louise Radley. Phil, 62, appeared at Southwark Crown Court after being accused of taking more than £1.5 million of Hannah's life savings once she became too ill to look after her financial affairs. The London therapist has now been cleared of stealing £1.3 million from a joint Swiss bank account in his and Mr. Phil's names between May 2015 and November 2017. Judge Geoffrey Parents directed the court jury to return a not guilty verdict after saying, as a matter of law, it is not illegally thief to effectively steal from yourself. Phil denies further charges of their relating to almost £270,000 allegedly stolen from his mother, Irisel Bank Lumley account. This sum is thought to have been taken through withdrawal of cash with ATMs, using Mr. Phil's credit cards for shopping express and making bank transfers between October 2014 and September 2017. Our relationship is non-existent. Phil offered evidence of a fraud relationship with his sister by telling the court how he was banned from her home around 2006 and that their relationship has since gone worse. Phil from Kilburn, northwest London, described their relationship as fraud-framing and non-existent. However, he has an excellent relationship with his mother, who he visits up to 8 times a year in Tel Aviv, Israel, where she retired with her late husband Monty, who died in 2010. Phil had worked for the family clock and watched film before becoming a therapist, and said his parents were extremely generous to him and his sister. He told the jury his mother, who had supported him through his drug addiction in his 20s, was not a miser and spent her money freely, was also helping the siblings purchase properties. Mr. Phil liked to have at least £500 in cash and often gave money and presents to the accused son and the daughter of his current partner. Phil told the court, "My mom would shop everywhere." Prosecutor Adam Gart perversely implied to jurors that it was unlikely Mr. Phil has been responsible for a magical mystery tour of spending during a trip to London in April and July 27, with transactions totally out of keeping with the expenditure of a lady in her advanced years. But her son denied all thief allegations, saying, "My mother liked to wear fashionable clothes, she liked to wear skinny jeans, and she liked to wear jackets, and she would shop everywhere. She would buy presents for other people, flowers, chocolates, jewelry for herself very rarely." He added she would buy perfumes and skin creams of a specific make and brand she liked. The trial continues. Pilot who threatened to crash intentionally in Mississippi had no license and faces terror charges. Corey Wayne Patterson is arrested after a plane comes down near Ripley, Mississippi nearly 5 hours after an emergency call was made to police, with the pilot threatening to crash into a Walmart store in Tupelo. Final suspect in Canada mass stabbing has died. Mike Sanderson and his brother Damon, who was found dead on Monday, were suspected of killing 10 people and injuring 18 others in one of the deadliest attacks in Canada modern history. The final suspect in the recent mass stabbing in and around a Canadian reserve has died after being run off the road. Police have confirmed Miles Sanderson, 32, was found near the town of Western in the Central Province as officers respond to reports of a stolen vehicle after being driven by a man armed with a knife. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police (RCMP) said officer rammed Sanderson's vehicle off the road into a ditch, and he was taken into custody, but went into what a spokeswoman described as medical distress. He was taken to hospital but died shortly afterwards. 10 people were killed and 18 injured after the attacks in and around the James Smith Cree Nation community in the Central Province on Sunday. 10 victims remain in hospital, 3 of them in a critical condition. At a press conference confirming Miles Sanderson's death, RCMP Assistant Commissioner Rhonda Blackmore said he had visited James Smith Cree Nation home to 9 of 10 victims and said many of them had witnessed incredible trauma. Many people haven't slept, she said. They told me every time I close my eye, I hear noises. I hope this gives them some sense of closure and that they can rest easier tonight knowing Miles is no longer at large. I know they are able to start healing. Hundreds of police officers undertook an intensive manhunt for suspect Miles and his brother Damon Sanderson, who had fled the crime scenes. Damon was found dead in the grassy areas of James Smith Cree Nation on Monday, with injuries police and said were not self-inflicted. Miles Sanderson, who officers described as armed and dangerous, remained on the loose until Wednesday afternoon. The stabbing rampage on Sunday was one of the deadliest attacks in Canada modern history. Police said some of the victims appeared to have been targeted, while others were attacked at random. Officers would have not revealed a possible motive, but a statement from an indigenous group from the province suggests the stabbing could be drug-related. But Ms. Blackmore said, unfortunately, now that Miles is decayed, we may never have an understanding as to that motivation. Questions are beginning to be asked about why Miles Sanderson, with 59 convictions and a long history of violence, was out on the street. The 32-year-old was released by a parole board in February while serving a sentence of more than 4 years on charges that include assault and robbery. But he had been wanted by police since May, apparently for violating the terms of his release.